Thank you, Tammy. Well, I guess you guys get the award for best attended session that I've been in today. So thank you all for being here. Somebody told me that the weather today is the way it is every day of the year in Wayne, Nebraska. So that's really good. I asked about a week or so ago when I found out I was going to be coming, I asked if they wanted me to do a PowerPoint, and someone said, well, when it comes to PowerPoint, most folks don't have any power and they don't have any point. So what is the point? So I was told that this would be kind of an open question and answer session, and I'm looking forward to that, to see what kinds of things are on your mind, and if you have further questions about my background, I'd be happy to answer that. So with that introduction, I think all of the onus is on you now to come up with the questions, right? Yes?
So you've served at these two smaller institutions, and Baker, I think, is private?
Baker is a Methodist institution, that's correct.
And Washburn is a city university? Or
Washburn is a municipal institution, which is basically City of Topeka and the County of Shawnee in the state of Kansas.
Those are going to be very different institutions than Wayne State College, which is a regional public institution and it's an open enrollment institution. What kind of experience with this type of institution do you have?
Well, there are two or three things that I think do translate pretty well. One of them is that Washburn University is also an open admission institution. And so since the founding of Washburn in 1865, we're 150 years old this year, as Lincoln College, we've been an open institution right from the very beginning. So some of the aspects in terms of the programs and the support systems that we have for students would be the same. Washburn is an interesting institution. If you know the state of Kansas, there are 6 higher education institutions, which are called the Regents institutions. And then there are the community colleges, and then there is Washburn. So people ask me where I'm from, I say, Washburn, all right? It is a little bit unusual in that we get about a third of what the other state institutions do, the regional institutions like Emporia, Fort Hays, and Pittsburgh State that you may be familiar with. They get about 30 to 35 million in state funding. We get between 10 and 15 state funding. But the majority of our public funding actually does come from the city and the county. Now, the reason why I think that in some ways that's kind of like Wayne is that what that means in terms of Washburn is that we've been very diligent in terms of our relationships with the community. And we think that how we're funded and the success that we have in continuing that funding has to do with the way that people perceive the strength of the institution. So in the same way that you have done a lot with service learning, we work very closely with the city and with the county on what we call high-impact community engagement practices, HICEPs, what we call them. But it's basically a form of service learning. So I think the open admission concept of Wayne State, the connection to the community, and that kind of service learning, I think those would be commonalities. The state, monitoring the state funding is something that those of you who have been involved with having boards, I came from Baker, which we had 3 board meetings a year, so there were 3 days on the calendar. But when I came to Washburn, we do a day and a half with our own board, and then we do 2 days with the state board. So 3.5 days a month I'm involved with the boards in terms of trying to monitor the state funding. And there are times when Washburn will go in front of the state system and talk about funding issues. So it's not exactly the same as you have in Nebraska, but there are some parallels there. Other questions? Yes?
Other than the fact it's a presidency and a move up, what appeals to you about Wayne State College?
The first thing I looked at when I started thinking about becoming a president, and I've joked a couple other places, but I'll say the same things. Some people say to me, why do you want to be a president? Other people say to me, why in the world do you want to be president? But as I looked at the institutions and started thinking about where would I want to go and what kinds of things would I want to see, there were a couple of things about Wayne State that were very important to me. First is the concept of student-centered teaching focused. That's right at the very beginning of our mission statement at Washburn. I think higher education institutions that are teaching, that are focusing on that, where the intent is to work with students every day, I think that's the most important thing that we do. The other thing is that I saw in the Wayne State strategic plan and the materials that I liked, which was very important, had to do with the pursuit of excellence. And I just like hanging around with people who want to be really good and want to do really special things. And the results you've had, U.S. News World Report, for example, indicates to me that the people in this room are working very hard to make this a special place. Not that other people don't do that, but it seemed to be something really unusual about Wayne. And I will tell you the kind of the final confirmation for me, and I apologize for those who've heard this story, but when I was contacted by the search firm about this position, there's an individual that works at Washburn. His name is Clark Coco, and he's the Dean of Washburn Institute of Technology. He's a fantastic dean, great administrator. And we were talking the day that I was contacted by the search firm, and I didn't say anything to him specifically about this. I just said, we were talking, and I said, Clark, you know, you're an amazing administrator. You've had a great career, haven't you? And he said, I'm not kidding you, he said, yeah, and it all started at Wayne State. I said, really? Tell me more. And so he waxed on for about 5 or 10 minutes about the community of Wayne and how Wayne State had meant everything to him where he started his career. And he talked about the quality of the people here. And he talked, and he finally noticed that I had kind of a look on my face like, wow. And he said, wait a minute, what's going on? And I told him about the position here. And so he said, you should look into that. This is a very special place. So those things and Clark Coco. That's why I'm here. Other questions? Yes?
Can you tell me a little bit about what kinds of retention efforts you might have been associated with and how you see that playing out at Wayne State?
Thank you for that question. As an open admission institution and one that is looking in terms of enrollment as being an very important factor for our budget, we currently have, I went back and counted in our strategic plan, we have 21 retention initiatives that we've started in the last 2 years and 18 new recruiting initiatives. And a lot of those have to do with personal service to the students. We started what we call a summer bridge program for students who have very low academic abilities. So the idea is to get those in either in the summer or the first semester and to provide special services for them. Next summer, we're going to start something called our Summer Institute. That's for first generation students. We've noticed that some of our first generation students, we have major retention challenges there, and so we're going to try to get them to campus, have a residential experience, and make sure that they have a very good experience with the first 6 hours that they take, kind of get to know campus life. We think that's important. We've started looking at what are the things that happen when students don't succeed. I don't know about Wayne State. We haven't talked about this yet, but we identified our top 10 classes. Literature refers to them as gateway classes. I call them pothole classes, classes where our students seem to be having a lot of trouble. For us, the top 2 are college algebra and the first composition class, English composition class. So the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, we're working on some alternative pedagogies that we're trying to do there. We've started processes like, if you don't like this, just pretend I didn't say it. But when we find that students aren't signing up to come back, we've started a program where our faculty contact those individuals, those students, and say, we noticed that open admission for the fall semester started 3 weeks ago, and you haven't enrolled. Is there anything going on there that we need to know about? So that's been very helpful. I should kind of cut to the bottom line and then come back. The efforts that we've made in the last year and a half, we've had the highest retention rate in 10 years. So someone asked me about our retention rates. We're for freshman to sophomore, We're at 65.8% now. 2 or 3 years ago, we were at 62. Our goal is to get to 72 in another 5 years. And so a lot of activity just looking at the students in terms of trying to figure out what's going on. We've had advising sessions. We've created an advising handbook for faculty in terms of trying to help the students. We've developed 10 modules. There's a financial aid package called SALT modules that helps students understand how to kind of navigate through financial loans and to stay enrolled. So we've started requiring those. We implemented a first-year experience with an intro class. So those are a few of the things that we're doing. But retention, recruiting, the old thing is if you've got a student, it's easier to keep a student than to go find a new one. So we've been working really hard on that, as well as doing some things overall for recruiting. We're building a new residence facility. We started about between 10 and 12 new programs in the last couple of years to try to attract students. Got a new forensic building going up, so we think that'll be great in partnership with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. But those are some of the things we're trying to do to attract and retain students. Thank you for your question. Yes?
How do you understand the relationship between the college president and the rest of the state college system, you know, the Board of Trustees and the system office and the other two institutions that are part of the state college system here in Nebraska?
That was one of the most important questions that I've been asking as it relates to talking to the chancellor and trying to understand that. It seems to me that the thing that I've been talking about today with others is that the relationship is that the president, I think, is the person that needs to communicate both directions in that. I think the president's role is essential in helping the system understand the culture and the things that are going on and the priorities of the campus. On the other hand, I think it's also the responsibility of the president to come back from the system meetings and to make sure that the campus understands the things that the systems do in terms of the individual institutions. So there are all kinds of things that one would hope that the system is doing in terms of negotiating, for example, efficiencies and lower costs for software. The more people that you have, the more things that you're buying, hopefully you get a lower cost on that. That the system is spreading out the cost of things that the university has to have, for example, general counsel, university counsel, legal issues. That the system is doing things such as negotiating bonding, getting good prices for that. That the system is working with the state, the legislature, the governor in trying to make things happen in higher education. And so there's a balance there. There's a cost. Anytime that you have a system, there's an overhead to that. And so I think it's important that the president helps bring that message to the system, but also to remind the individual campuses about what the system is doing for them. Now, what I don't know, and I wouldn't until I started, is what the relationship is between the three presidents and how the three presidents work together in terms of interacting. But I've been told that it's a fairly friendly arrangement here and that the presidents seem to get along.
Are you familiar with our dean structure on campus?
I am. I met with the deans the first thing, and maybe add a little more to your question, and I think I know where you're going, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I guess the follow-up then is, at one time, our deans had tenure, and more recently, deans do not have tenure, and there's a little bit of I guess, discontent among our faculty that deans serve a very important role on campus. And in order for them to work with faculty and work with the administration, I think a lot of faculty on this campus would like to see the potential for tenure reinstated.
I will tell you just personal experience, 4.5, 5 years ago, when I went to Washburn, I had 2 offers on the table as Vice President of Academic Affairs. One came with tenure and one didn't. And the one that had tenure was Washburn University, and I went to Washburn University. So that issue is very important. And when people are making difficult decisions, particularly if you have interim situations where a person is not convinced that they're going to spend the rest of their career in administration, and if it doesn't happen in one place, they will continue as administrators somewhere else, then I think tenure is important because it is an institution investing in the work of a particular individual. That's why it's important as a faculty member, an institution says to you, you're a tenured person, this is the way that we recognize the work that you have done, but it also is a way of saying we hope that you'll be a part of this institution in the future. So to me, the question about do deans have tenure or do they not, it seems like in what I've read about the decisions that Wayne State has made, part of the question I would be asking in that is, do people, let me use chairs because I think chairs is a better way to make my point. A lot of places that I've been, chairs kind of rotate through, and maybe even you hold the chair position for a year or 2 and then you go back to the faculty, as opposed to chair becoming a permanent upward spiral toward the darker side of administration, right? And so the importance of tenure, I think, is rooted partly in how do you define yourself for the future. But I think that, I'm guessing that the reason that this came up here is because a lot of times it gets tied into salary issues, and so if a faculty member becomes a dean but then wants to return to be a faculty member, then does the salary revert to the faculty salary, or is the person expected to keep the dean salary? And so these kind of complicate that issue of what are you working for, what kinds of perks do you have, but I would hope that whatever system that we have, that there are communications so that the faculty in the particular school are communicating about the success of the dean, the things that are going well. And it's a difficult question. So I don't know if you want me to go, am I for it, am I against it? I'm a faculty person. I love tenure. It's a good thing, and it has a great history and has served higher education well. So the role of tenure in administration, that's has less of a history, I think. Yes?
Yeah, Wayne, Nebraska being part of Northeast Nebraska, how do you reach out to Northeast Nebraska? Do you join golf leagues in several towns, or how do you get out and about?
Well, if you're suggesting that I play more golf, I like that. We should talk. I'm not a great golfer, but I love the game. I think that the president, the position of president is really important because it's a symbolic position for the university. So the president has to be talking to every person possible. Every moment you can, you got to be out there talking about what Wayne State is, what it stands for. And so one of the things that I've been asking this morning, and would continue to ask if I were to come here, would be, what is the story of Wayne State? And you can help the president tell that story too. You help the president because it's an ongoing story. Every time you're successful at something, that's something the president should be talking about. But particularly, one of the things I think higher education in the United States has not done well is that I think we all kind of tell the same story, all right? How many institutions don't say something about quality? We're a quality institution. And how many don't say something about students, right? We care for students. And so if you get on the other side of that and you think, I'm down to 2 or 3 choices, and Wayne State is one of those choices, what is the difference going to be so that students, as they reflect, say, that's the place I'm going. I'm going to Wayne State. And I will tell you one of the things that we're working on at Washburn, which I think for us is the differentiator. I want to come back to that thing we call HICEPs. We are, through our Center for Teaching Excellence and Learning, which we created as part of our QI project as related to HLC. Everybody's supposed to have a quality initiative. And so we created the Center for Teaching Excellence and Learning. And one of the 4 pillars for teaching excellence had to do with the idea of community engagement as it relates to teaching. So we're developing some video components now that we're going to have on our website. And it's going to say, this is what an education is. This is what a student can expect at Washburn. And it's going to show our students in those settings where they are community engagement focused. So our nurses are going to be getting out of our mobile health van, and they're going to be in those sites, and they're going to be doing blood pressure monitorings and things like that. Our teacher education folks are going to be seen in the local 501 district doing reading programs with those individuals. Our biology students, our chemistry folks are going to be in the KBI lab, and you're going to see that. And you're going to see what that means in terms of the students and defining what an education is at Washburn. Now, the last part of this, I don't know if I've got the guts to do or not, but what I really want to do is to have the last element of the clip be a student sitting in a 500-seat auditorium somewhere looking totally bored. And we won't exactly put the name of that university on the bottom, but the implication will be fairly clear, right? That's the difference between who we are and some of the other places where you might go. So to me, it is defining what the institution is, what's the selling point for it, and then it's the president getting out there and talking to everybody possible about those great things that are happening here, and playing as much golf as possible. Yes?
Good afternoon and welcome to Wayne.
Thank
I'm
you.
Michael Anderson. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs, so we have a little something in common. I'd like you to talk briefly about your experience working with satellite campuses, if you would.
Okay. Satellite campuses. The time that I was at Baker University, historic, as I mentioned, first higher ed institution in Kansas, 1858, started with the historic campus in Baldwin City. And there are about 800 to 900 students that are in traditional liberal arts model there. But about the mid-1990s, Baker decided to go to Kansas City and was actually one of the first higher ed institutions to start outreach beyond the major campus. So Baker opened a campus in Overland Park, and largely School of Professional and Graduate Studies, which is their euphemism for business programs, and took their graduate education programs to Overland Park, which is one of the larger suburbs for Kansas City. So between those two things, the funding mechanism, those two programs in themselves basically fund the traditional campus back in Baldwin City. And just in terms of numbers breakdown, I mentioned slightly less than 1,000 on the historical campus. Baker ran about 3,000 additional students, 4,000 total for Baker University at the satellite campus there. The success, I think, of that program was that in reaching out to the businesses in the Overland Park area, in doing the MBA there, they got a lot of the businesses to invest in underwriting the cost of education for the MBA students. So most of the tuition income that was coming in the Baker program was coming through businesses, people like Sprint, who were sending their employees back for additional training. So that was a large part of my job when I was a provost and academic affairs chief academic officer, was that satellite campus. They did have additional programs, a satellite campus in Topeka that they did graduate business programs, and a satellite program in Wichita. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but the satellite campuses go in the larger population bases. So when you look at Kansas, we were in Overland Park on the Kansas side of Kansas City, we were in Wichita, and we were in Topeka, which are the three biggest areas to be in. As it relates to Washburn, top secret stuff. Don't tell anybody. We are in the midst right now at Washburn of doing the same kind of thing. The city of Lenexa, which is another suburb in Kansas City, approached us, and they're creating a city center, an educational building, along with a marketplace and some family fun kinds of things in this one spot, and they wanted an educational tenant. And so we're developing a partnership with them. In Kansas, you have to be kind of careful in terms of where you take programs. This is probably different than Nebraska. But each higher education institution has a footprint. Basically, ours is Shawnee County, so how do we go to Kansas City, right? The way you do that is the rules don't apply if what you deliver on ground is 30% or less of what the overall experience is. So, just to make the math easy, if you were going to have 10 classes for a 2-hour or 3-hour experience, if you have 3, 2, or 1 of those on ground and the rest of it online, you can do that. So the footprint issues aren't there. So you have to be a little careful about in Kansas about how to do satellite programs. But I've heard a lot about the center in South Sioux City, and that would be one of my conversations, I think, in the first month or two, if I took the position to. I've heard different things, to be honest with you. Is it successful? Is it on the way to being successful? Is it so-so, and maybe it will be successful? I would just like to hear the various perspectives that you have on that and where we're going. The thing that I think higher education has to look at, I mean, you have to have students to have a reason to be. And in Kansas, the student population, 18-year-old base of Kansas, has been going down for a long time. Now it's starting to stabilize, but we went through about a 5-year period where the numbers were just dropping. So I think another question that goes along, maybe the addendum to your question is, if you're not thinking about those kinds of satellites, then you have to say primary location, or maybe both. But you have to be asking the question, what are we doing in the primary location to make sure that there are students who are interested in the institution and that we continue to have good enrollments? That's why I look at Kevin, right? So, Kevin, good enrollments. Yeah. Yes?
Washburn and Wayne State are similar in another fashion. They're both NCAA Division II institutions, so I'm curious your thoughts on what the role of intercollegiate athletics is on a college campus such as Wayne State.
Okay, great question. I'll start by saying, I'll just say it. I love sports. I grew up in a small town, high school of about 200. I'll tell you how small the high school was. I played quarterback. But ever since growing up in a community like that, I've loved sports. I had season tickets for the Chiefs for 14 years, in the good years, not the bad years. And I think sports are very important. When I went to UMKC, not that this is the right justification, but I would tell you that we went from Division III to Division I in 1 year because the president thought that if that little scroller on ESPN, right, this was when ESPN was kind of becoming popular, the Division I teams got on that little scroll. So we went to Division I, and that was an attempt to create a higher visibility for the institution. Retrospect, I'm not sure that was great. We did put a lot of money into Division I basketball, and we had some success, had some NBA recruits who did well. And it did bring some visibility to the institution. I think the better reason to have the conversation is what I saw at Baker. At Baker, I don't know your numbers, so I don't know if this will make your jaw drop or whether you'll just go, oh, But at Baker, 46% of the students at Baker were involved in athletics on some kind of athletic scholarship. 46%, 1 in 2, basically. So that meant that athletics was really important to the culture of that institution. People celebrated the student's success when something good happened to an athlete. We felt good about that. There were time zones in the schedule from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. We didn't have classes because we knew that's when the practices were going on. But it made a big difference in terms of recruiting students to that institution. I think participation in athletics is one of those things where you learn a lot. I feel like I learned a lot. There are days, when I work kind of long hours, and I remember when I ran the 2-mile event when I was in high school. And what do you learn from the 2-mile event? It hurts, keep going, right? So a lot of you, you think, what's the job? Well, some days it hurts, but keep going, right? So I think Division II, it provides a level of visibility for the institution. Washburn is a Division II institution. We played MIAA, good conference. I've heard great things about the Northern Suns. As a matter of fact, the athletic director told me, our athletic director said it's a very good conference, and that it'd be a good experience if I were to end up here and be a part of this. So I am supportive of athletics, and I think it helps bring a lot of students to institutions. And once they're here, even if they don't continue in the athletic program, a lot of students finish college that wouldn't be here, and finishing college is the key to the 21st century in my mind. Yes?
Welcome to Wayne.
Thank you.
As a member of the President's Council on Diversity, I have a couple questions for you. I'll put it in one. We're in the rural Midwest. Are you familiar with the demographics here? How do you see the role of diversity and international understanding or education globalization in terms of our academic development here as an institution? And how would you see that in terms of priorities for the campus?
Okay, thank you. I mentioned our Center for Teaching Excellence and Learning, and I'll go back and say that what we did is we took a year as a group of faculty, and we discussed the things that we thought were important and the things that were particularly challenging for the faculty there, right? And so the community engagement was one of those things. Diversity was one of the other 4 elements that we developed for that. I think diversity is incredibly important, and especially for a higher education institution, and particularly for a higher education institution that maybe is not in an area where there is a lot of diversity. I will just tell you my own personal experience. I grew up in Greene County, Illinois. And in growing up, there was not a single person of color in my high school, and there was not a single person of color in the county. And it was not until I went to community college, I'm a first-generation student, it was not until I went to community college that I developed meaningful relationships with people with different backgrounds. So I think higher education has a particular responsibility in areas where you don't see a lot of diversity to help people understand that. When I went to Baker, one of the first things I did was they did not have any kind of diversity goals. They did not have a diversity committee. And so we created that and talked about what we wanted to try to accomplish as an institution. The state of Kansas, I think, is fortunate in that there is a tradition in the state of Kansas. There was a gentleman who worked at K-State. There's a conference named after him. It's called the Tilford Conference. And so higher education gets together for 2 days every year in Kansas. The leaders in higher education, the faculty get together, and we talk about diversity issues. And we bring people in, national speakers, to talk about diversity. And then we break out and we trade best practices stories. So people who develop things within their classes, they share their materials, they share their outcomes, the things they're trying to do. It seems to me that as it relates to diversity, that there are 2 conversations that come right after what I've just said. One of those is, how do you bring diversity elements to the campus? Whether that's curricular issues, whether that's creating greater diversity within the faculty and staff, i.e. mentors for the students in the future. And so that's one issue. The other issue, and one of the reasons why I take students to Costa Rica every year, in January, other than it's cold in Kansas, is that I think diversity is a very important thing. And so, like last year, we had 25 students from the Washburn campus. And so traveling internationally is another way to have students experience diversity. So I think those two things would be a part of the conversation that I'd be very interested in. What are we doing to create more diversity here? And then what are we doing? And when I say what are we doing, typically, let's be honest, usually it's about money. What kind of support can we give students to help them in terms of going internationally? And we've increased, we were averaging, when I got to Washburn, about 5 international faculty-led trips per year, and in the time I've been there, we're up to about 15 now. So students there have a really wide variety of chances to go abroad and experience diversity in that way. And if anybody wants to go to Costa Rica next January, just let me know.
I want to go.
Okay.
And I'll assess it.
I'll start a list. I'll start a list. Yes?
You've already alluded a little bit to this, but currently Wayne State College, we are in our reaffirmation year with the Higher Learning Commission, and so at this time now we will be have the opportunities to select a different pathway. All pathways are now continuous improvement pathways. So what is your experience with that, and how would you guide us in this new tradition or this new transition into the new pathways?
Yeah. HLC is something that I've actually spent quite a bit of time with. Right before I finished at Baker, we developed our 10-year HLC report, and so I'm fairly familiar with those questions. In terms of the open pathway, there are 2 challenges I think that institutions have. One of them is what's called the quality assurance argument. We call it the Quality Assurance Working Group, or COGS. So we have 6 different faculty groups that are working in those areas that HLC lays out. And a lot of those have to do with student learning and processes, and do you have the right support mechanisms, etc. You have to be able to document that. And it used to be, I don't know how much you know about this or how much you care about this, but it used to be that you could kind of generate a report every 10 years, and as long as you said some good things, you were kind of on the right path toward accreditation. They have moved to a word limit now, to where it's less about saying things and it's more about demonstrating through the databases and your tables that things are actually happening. So the quality assurance working groups are very important. And we're on the open pathway, and I think the open pathway is fine. But it takes a lot more dedication. You've got to have people monitoring those things. And we're investing, we're getting ready to in 15, 16, just to show you the cost of that. We're investing in a brand new full-time position specifically to track the data for our quality assurance working groups. They're requiring more and more, so we have to have that information. So each of the quality assurance working groups will be able to talk to this person and say, can you set up a data file that will be able to track our student learning in general education? Can you help us track student learning in the major area, etc.? So quality assurance is one issue if you go open pathway. The other one, which is, I think, a really exciting conversation, is HLC, its history, has been in continuous improvement. And they really like that. They like wearing that hat. I think they like wearing that hat more than the government responding to all the government rules. So what you have to do in the open pathway is you have a period of time in that 10-year window. You've got a 3-year window where you're supposed to pick something, a quality initiative, an improvement project that you work on for 3 years, and then you report the results in the 4th year, all right? And so that's what we did in 2012. We had a 1-year conversation as faculty, because we knew we were headed toward this, about what do we care about, what do we want to do. And that's where we selected the Center for Teaching Excellence and Learning as our quality initiative. And so we've been gathering data for calendar 14, 15, calendar 16. We will put that into a report in 17, and then that will be on tap for our site visit in 18, 19. Now, The thing that was fun about that, and I mean, seriously, it really was fun, is you just get a group like this together and you just start with a big, broad question. What do we care about? I mean, of all the things that maybe we could think about really focusing on, what do we really want to take care of? What do we want to say in 4 years? We are better at that than we are now. And it really can be anything. That's the part that I like about HLC. Certain things you have to have this. The QI is specifically meant to be kind of open-ended and to challenge the faculty and the staff, the institution, to step up and say, we care about diversity. So we're going to do a 3-year diversity. We care about technology in the classroom. We care about whatever it is, general education. So the QI, I think, would be a really fun part of HLC in the next 10 years if you go the open path.
My name's Michael Merrick. I'm a mass communication faculty member. And the reporter in me is leading me to ask you a follow-up question to something that was touched on earlier. At Wayne State College, there is a tension right now. On one side, you have, I think, faculty and staff, and on the other side, you have the State Board office in Lincoln. And I think if you were to do a survey, you would find that faculty and staff are often kind of unhappy with the State Board office. I think you would find there are concerns about less local control and concerns about erosion of shared governance. And as you alluded to earlier, the new president will kind of step into that. And I think of it as kind of playing the Henry Kissinger shuttle diplomacy role back and forth. But understanding that there are some of those tensions and concerns right now, how would you go about working in that environment?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Henry Kissinger, because I actually, sometimes people say, how's your day? And I say, I had a Kissinger day. And I mean, I went from one to the other and back again, just trying to clarify things. I would acknowledge something you said, and that is tension. I've been here for less than 24 hours, and I sense that there is some of that tension. I think one of the things that I would try to do would be to get a better understanding of what it is. Usually when there's tension, there's some reason for tension, right? And it's like, I'm upset because, you know, if it's a 4-year-old, you stole my toy, right? There's something that's not right about my world, and the other side is causing that. So I think one of the things that I would try to figure out in conversations on campus is if there's a tension with the system, what is it that is occurring that doesn't feel right? So is there less autonomy over the general education curriculum? Is there less autonomy about accepting transfer credits? Is there less autonomy in the way that I deliver instruction as a faculty member? And to try to understand what are the issues that don't seem right. And then I think if I were president, I would be asking the system, what is it that this, whatever is happening, what does the system think that they're getting from it? So if it's causing tension, what's the value added of why we would cause this tension? And part of it, I would just tell you based on the few hours that I've been here, I think there are some communication issues. I really do, about that and understanding how people are perceiving the picture. I won't get into details, but just I come back to cost benefit and analyzing that, and what does everybody think they're getting or not getting out of it. And I think that's where it would seem to need to start. Thank you, Michael. Have we exhausted our questions?
There's a student question.
Okay, student question.
Yes, affordability is really important to a lot of us, so I guess what would be your plan in keeping tuition down and keeping, you know, everything affordable?
That's one of the biggest challenges, I think, in higher education. story I say is that when I came to UMKC in 1987, the state of Missouri was paying for 70% of the cost of an education, a student's education at UMKC. 70%, 1987. When I left, it was 20 years later, but when I left, the state was paying for 30% of the cost of the education. And guess who was paying the other part of it? It was the student, right? And so how you keep higher education affordable is a very important thing. I will tell you, don't know if this makes you feel any better or not, but Nebraska is biting a bigger part of the apple in terms of the cost of higher education than Kansas is. Kansas is kind of joining a lot of places and taking a step back and saying that higher education is a private good, and so it needs to be paid for by the private individual, and it gets harder. Every year, the institutions in Kansas are raising tuition about 4 to 5% for the students. In terms of trying to keep higher education affordable, one of the things that can help a great deal, and where I think a president can help, is scholarship programs. And I think a president needs to continuously be talking to the alumni of an institution and saying, you remember 20 years ago when this place was really special for you, and you remember how it changed your life. Have you done anything in terms of giving back? One of the things that I would say about Washburn is Washburn has been incredibly successful, I think, at telling that story and asking that question. We have an endowment. We're an institution of 7,000 students. We have an endowment of almost 170 million. And so 170 million generates a lot of scholarship dollars. So one of the ways that the president can be involved is to be out and trying to raise as much money as possible for endowments so that we have more support for students. Another thing that we're trying to do at Washburn to try to help with that equation is I mentioned retention before. One of the things that I didn't say about what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase on-campus employment for students so that if students want to work, want to try to keep the cost down by making some money, that they will be able to do that. So looking into ways that we can establish as many work-study opportunities for students as possible is important. It's important not only as it relates to keeping costs down for students, but all the literature that we're looking at right now say that on-campus employment is one of the best ways to also increase retention. Whenever students start taking jobs at Home Depot or somewhere like that, that they're more likely actually to drop out of school, particularly if they're fairly successful and somebody offers them 20 hours a week at Home Depot or 30 hours of work at Home Depot, and then they're gone. Our NESE survey indicates that our students, that off-campus work, should I say temptation, that opportunity is a really big deal. And so we're trying to figure out ways that doesn't distract them. Because when you think about it, if you invest in 4 years and you get the higher education credential that you want and you're set up for the rest of your life, that's really probably the best way to get there. A lot of people are trying to do it 6 or 7 or 8 years by working part-time. But if you look at the numbers on that, if you go 4 years and get done and then get to your career, overall your earning power is much higher.
Is that it? Thank you.
One last one more here.
Yes.
Okay, when you thought about applying for this job, what, if you got the job, do you feel you're really going to do for us? And on the second part, why do you really want the job?
What would I do for you? Is that basically the first question? Yeah. Okay. Bring you coffee in the morning, an occasional snack at the cafeteria. I think the best thing that I could do for the people in the room, whether you're a faculty member, staff member, or student, the best thing I could do is to try to help in creating the best educational environment as possible at Wayne State. And the question has come up a couple of times for me today, what's your leadership style? And I would just kind of cut to the bottom line to say, usually, when I have meetings with people, at some point in there, I say, what can I do to help? And when I say that, I'm asking the question, what is the change that you want to see, right? And have you thought through that? Do you know where you want to go? And then what would you expect the system, what would you expect the college to do to make that happen? And a lot of times the president is in a position to have conversations to try to be a change agent to alter that. So what would I do for you? I think I would ask the question a lot, where are we going? How do we get better? And what can I do to make that happen? So that's the first thing. Why do I want this job? Well, Clark Coco's a pretty convincing guy. And it was just something special about the way that he talked about this community. And I met with students at lunch, and it was a pretty special thing, the way they talked about this institution. And there was one individual, let's see, I shouldn't give away names. There was an individual who just said that he or she was recently elected to something on campus and had several people, faculty and staff, come up that week and say, congratulations on being elected, right? And that was really powerful for that student. Right? The person said, I don't even know some of these people, right? And they were like, wow, congratulations, you're making a difference here as a student. And so I come back to excellence, and I like hanging around with dedicated people who want to change the world to be a better place. And I get the sense that that's what Wayne State is, a group of really dedicated people who are working hard to change people, to affect their lives in a great way. And who wouldn't want to be part of something like that? Okay.